When I turned 67, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. I was standing in my kitchen, holding my car keys, but I couldn't remember where I was planning to go. Not just a momentary lapse. I stood there for several minutes, completely blank. My daughter later told me I had been heading to my doctor's appointment, something I had been talking about all week. That moment changed everything for me. You see, most people think cognitive decline happens suddenly. One day you're fine. The next day you can't remember your grandchildren's names. But the truth is, your brain has been sending you warning signals long before anyone else notices. These aren't the obvious signs that family members spot or that doctors test for during routine checkups. These are subtle changes that only you experience, quiet shifts that happen gradually over months or even years. I've spent the last 2 years researching this topic, talking to neurologists, reading medical journals, and connecting with other seniors who've walked this path. What I discovered shocked me. There are 5 early warning signs that most people completely miss. Signs that could give you precious time to take action, to slow the process, or even to reverse some of the damage. But here's what really matters. Recognizing these signs early isn't about accepting defeat. It's about fighting back. Because when you catch cognitive decline in its earlier stages, you still have options. You can make changes to your diet, your exercise routine, your sleep habits, and your mental activities that can genuinely make a difference. Stay with me through all 5 signs, because the last one might surprise you. It's something that happens to nearly everyone over 70, but most people dismiss it as normal aging. Yet research shows it could be one of the most important early indicators we have. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to watch for and what steps you can take if you recognize any of these patterns in yourself. Now, let's start with the first sign. Sign 1. Your internal clock starts failing. The first sign isn't about forgetting names or misplacing items. It's something far more subtle that happens with time. I'm talking about your internal sense of time, your ability to judge how long tasks take, or to keep track of time passing during the day. Think about Margaret, a 74-year-old woman who used to manage her household like clockwork. She knew exactly how long it took to prepare dinner, how much time she needed to get ready for appointments, and when her favorite TV shows would end. But over the course of several months, something changed. She started consistently underestimating how long simple tasks would take. What used to be a 30-minute grocery trip now stretched to over an hour, and she couldn't figure out where the time had gone. Even more telling, Margaret began losing track of time during conversations. She'd call her sister for what felt like a brief chat, only to discover they'd been talking for 2 hours. Or she'd sit down to read the newspaper after breakfast and suddenly realize it was well past lunchtime. This isn't about being late occasionally or losing track of time when you're deeply engaged in something you enjoy. This is about your brain's internal timer, the system that helps you navigate through daily life, starting to malfunction. Your brain has regions specifically dedicated to processing time, and when cognitive decline begins, these areas are often affected early. The reason most people miss this sign is because it feels so ordinary. We tell ourselves we're just getting older, that time moves differently when you're retired, or that we're simply more relaxed about schedules. But research shows that significant changes in time perception can indicate that the brain's executive functions are beginning to decline. If you've noticed that you consistently misjudge how long tasks take, if you frequently lose track of time during routine activities, or if you find yourself surprised by how much time has passed during simple activities, pay attention. This could be your brain's first quiet signal that something is changing. Sign 2. Your emotional reactions become unpredictable. The second sign involves something most people never connect to cognitive health: changes in how you react emotionally to everyday situations. This isn't about becoming more sentimental as you age or feeling sad about losing old friends. This is about your emotional responses becoming inconsistent or inappropriate to the situation. Consider Robert, a 78-year-old man who had always been known for his steady temperament. His family described him as the calm one, the person who never got rattled by small problems. But over several months, his wife noticed changes. Robert would become frustrated to the point of tears over minor inconveniences, a slow internet connection, a misplaced magazine, or having to wait a few extra minutes at a traffic light. More concerning, he began having emotional reactions that didn't match the situation. He'd laugh inappropriately during serious conversations, or become unexpectedly sad while watching commercials that had never affected him before. His emotions seemed to have a mind of their own, disconnected from the circumstances around him. What Robert and his family didn't realize was that the brain regions responsible for emotional regulation are closely connected to those involved in cognitive processing. When cognitive decline begins, it doesn't just affect memory and thinking, it also disrupts the brain's ability to modulate emotional responses appropriately. This sign is particularly tricky because families often attribute these changes to stress, grief, or normal aging. They might think their loved one is just going through a difficult period or adjusting to retirement. But when emotional volatility appears alongside other subtle changes, it could be signaling that the brain's complex network of connections is starting to break down. If you've noticed that your emotional reactions have become harder to predict or control, if you find yourself crying or getting angry over things that never bothered you before, or if people have commented that you seem more emotionally sensitive lately, this could be another early warning sign worth investigating. Sign 3. Your ability to follow complex conversations starts slipping. The third sign is one that many seniors notice but rarely discuss openly. Difficulty following conversations, especially when multiple people are talking or when the topic shifts quickly. This isn't about hearing problems or simply losing interest in what others are saying. This is about your brain struggling to process and track complex verbal information. Picture Dorothy, a 76-year-old woman who had always been the life of family gatherings. She could keep up with multiple conversations happening around the dinner table, jump between topics effortlessly, and remember details from stories told weeks earlier. But gradually, she began to notice changes during family visits. When her grandchildren would excitedly tell her about their school projects, switching rapidly between subjects and talking over each other, Dorothy found herself getting lost. She'd smile and nod, but internally she was struggling to follow who was saying what and what each story was actually about. During book club meetings, she'd lose track of the discussion when members would reference earlier parts of the book or make connections between different chapters. The most frustrating part for Dorothy was that she could still have perfectly normal one-on-one conversations. Her thinking seemed clear, her memory was mostly intact, and she could discuss current events or share stories from her past without any problems. But put her in a group setting or present her with layered information, and her brain seemed to hit a wall. This happens because processing complex conversations requires multiple cognitive functions working together simultaneously. Your brain has to track who is speaking, remember what was said moments earlier, understand the context, and predict where the conversation is heading. When cognitive decline begins, this orchestration becomes more difficult, even though individual cognitive functions might still seem intact. Many people dismiss this sign, thinking they're just becoming less social or that conversations today move too fast. But if you've noticed that group conversations feel overwhelming in ways they never did before, or if you find yourself frequently asking people to repeat themselves not because you didn't hear them, but because you lost the thread of what they were saying, this could be your brain signaling that its processing power is beginning to change. Sign 4. Your ability to make everyday decisions becomes overwhelming. The fourth sign is perhaps the most subtle yet most significant. Simple decisions that once required no thought suddenly feel overwhelming or make. This isn't about major impossible-to-life choices or complex financial decisions. This is about everyday choices that used to be automatic: what to wear, what to eat for lunch, or which route to take to the store. Let me tell you about Harold, an 81-year-old retired teacher who prided himself on being decisive and organized. Harold had run a classroom for 30 years, making countless quick decisions every day about lesson plans, student needs, and classroom management. But something started changing during his retirement. Harold began standing in his closet every morning, staring at his clothes for 10 or 15 minutes, unable to decide what to wear. Not because he was trying to make a fashion statement or because the weather was uncertain. He simply couldn't process the choice. The same thing happened at the grocery store. He'd stand in front of the cereal aisle, overwhelmed by options that had never bothered him before. Even choosing between 2 restaurants for dinner with his wife became a source of anxiety. What Harold didn't understand was that decision-making requires multiple brain functions working in harmony. You need to evaluate options, predict outcomes, access past experiences, and weigh preferences, all while filtering out irrelevant information. When cognitive decline begins, this complex process starts breaking down, making even simple choices feel monumental. The tricky part about this sign is that it often gets misinterpreted. Family members might think their loved one is becoming indecisive or overly cautious. The person experiencing it might blame themselves for being lazy or unmotivated. But what's really happening is that the brain's executive function, the CEO, that helps coordinate all your mental processes, is starting to struggle. Harold's wife noticed that he'd often defer decisions to her, saying things like, "Whatever you think is best," or "You choose." At first, she thought he was just being considerate, but eventually she realized he genuinely couldn't make the decisions himself. When she pointed this out gently, Harold admitted he'd been feeling overwhelmed by choices that used to be effortless. If you've noticed that simple decisions now require more mental energy than they used to, if you find yourself avoiding situations where you have to make choices, or if you frequently feel paralyzed by options that once seemed straightforward, your brain might be telling you that its decision-making networks are under strain. This sign is particularly important because decision-making difficulties often appear before memory problems become obvious. By the time someone is forgetting recent conversations or getting lost in familiar places, the cognitive decline has usually progressed significantly. But decision-making challenges can emerge much earlier, giving you a valuable window of opportunity to take action. Sign 5. Your sleep patterns become chaotic and unrefreshing. The 5th and final sign might surprise you because it's something almost every senior experiences to some degree. Dramatic changes in sleep patterns that leave you feeling exhausted despite spending adequate time in bed. But here's what most people don't realize. The relationship between sleep and cognitive decline is far more complex and important than anyone imagined. This isn't about occasionally having trouble falling asleep or waking up once during the night. This is about your sleep architecture, the deep, restorative cycles that your brain depends on, completely falling apart. Let me explain what this looks like in real life. Meet Eleanor, a 73-year-old woman who had always been what she called a good sleeper. She'd go to bed around 10, fall asleep within minutes, and wake up refreshed at 6:30 every morning. But over the course of about 6 months, everything changed. Eleanor would still go to bed at her usual time, but she'd lie awake for hours, her mind racing with random thoughts. When she finally did fall asleep, she'd wake up multiple times throughout the night, sometimes alert and anxious, sometimes confused about where she was. Most concerning of all, Eleanor would sleep for 8 or 9 hours, but wake up feeling like she hadn't slept at all. She'd spend her days in a fog, feeling mentally sluggish and physically drained. Her daughter suggested she might have sleep apnea, so Eleanor underwent testing, but the results came back normal. Her doctor prescribed sleep medications, but they only made her feel groggy during the day, without improving the quality of her rest. What Eleanor and her doctors didn't initially understand was that her brain was losing its ability to maintain healthy sleep cycles. During normal sleep, your brain goes through distinct stages: light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep, in predictable patterns. Each stage serves a crucial purpose. Deep sleep helps consolidate memories and clear toxins from brain tissue, while REM sleep supports emotional processing and creative thinking. When cognitive decline begins, one of the first systems to malfunction is the brain's sleep regulation. The areas responsible for maintaining these cycles start sending mixed signals, resulting in fragmented, unrestorative sleep. Even worse, poor sleep accelerates cognitive decline, creating a vicious cycle where sleep problems and brain function deteriorate together. Recent research has revealed something startling. The brain uses deep sleep to flush out toxic proteins that accumulate during waking hours. These same proteins, particularly one called beta amyloid, are strongly associated with cognitive decline and dementia. When your sleep cycles become disrupted, your brain can't perform this crucial cleaning function effectively, allowing harmful substances to build up over time. Eleanor's experience is particularly common because sleep changes often appear months or even years before other cognitive symptoms become obvious. Many seniors and their families dismiss these changes as normal aging or stress-related insomnia. They try different mattresses, adjust room temperature, or experiment with herbal teas, never realizing that the problem might be neurological rather than environmental. If you've noticed that your sleep has become unpredictable, if you're lying awake with racing thoughts, waking up multiple times per night, or feeling exhausted despite adequate time in bed, this could be one of the most important early warning signs your brain can give you. Unlike some of the other signs we've discussed, sleep problems can often be addressed with targeted interventions, potentially slowing or even reversing some of the cognitive changes. The key is recognizing that dramatic sleep changes in your 70s and beyond aren't just inconvenient. They're potentially serious signals that your brain's regulatory systems need attention. When combined with any of the other 4 signs we've covered, sleep disruptions should prompt a conversation with a healthcare provider who understands the connection between sleep and cognitive health. Now that you know these 5 subtle signs, I want you to understand something important. Recognizing them isn't about surrendering to an inevitable future. It's about taking control while you still can. Each of these signs represents your brain's way of asking for help before the problems become obvious to everyone else. If you've recognized yourself in any of these descriptions, don't panic. Early intervention can make a tremendous difference. Simple changes like regular physical exercise, engaging in mentally challenging activities, improving your sleep habits, and maintaining strong social connections have all been shown to slow cognitive decline and sometimes even reverse early changes. The most important thing you can do right now is pay attention to your own patterns. Trust what your body and mind are telling you, even when others say it's just normal aging. Because the earlier you act, the more power you have to influence your cognitive future. Remember, these signs aren't a diagnosis, they're a wake-up call. If you've noticed several of these patterns in yourself, consider discussing them with a healthcare provider who specializes in cognitive health. The conversation might be uncomfortable, but it could also be the most important one you ever have. Your brain has been your faithful companion for decades. When it starts sending these quiet signals, the greatest gift you can give yourself is to listen and respond with the care and attention it deserves, because you still have time to make choices that matter, and that time is precious. Thank you for joining me today. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it in your life. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.